Senator, who are thou and whence comest thou once again?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bodie, for having me on your show once again. We had a good time a few weeks ago with Senator Maxine Seymour. So happy to be on your show again. For those viewing on TV or listening on the radio, I'm Senator Barry Griffin, Vice President of the Senate.
Barry Griffin, the Vice President. Okay, Barry, Senator, the Honorable Senator. You here in a particular capacity today. You know, we would have a number of questions, and as a vice president, you must be in the mix to a certain extent. What went down with this shuffle?
I think that's the question on the minds of most Bahamians, but for me, it's not a question of what went down with the shuffle, so to speak. The government right now, we are at the 2-year mark. We've had lots of progress, lots of success over the last 2 years, and priorities of the government are now shifting. When we first came into office, we met government in a state of peril. We were in the midst of a health pandemic. The economy was shut, and we had to do a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of hard work to rejuvenate the economy and open up the country, so to speak, and bring things back to where they are right now. And so we've calmed the waters. The economy is going on all cylinders. The COVID pandemic is pretty much behind us. And so now the government is shifting priorities and reorganizing in a way that fits the priorities and the goals that we need to meet for this next part of our term.
So the shuffle, in your opinion, I know you may not necessarily speak officially for the Prime Minister, but you are in the mix. Was the shuffle a good one in your opinion?
I think so. As I said, the government is sort of shifting to the next phase of our administration, and so the shuffle, so to speak, is one part of a number of changes that are being made. We're big on change, we're big on transformation, and so there are lots of other things that are shifting. And so right now, I think the Prime Minister has had an opportunity to assess the successes of his cabinet members, and I think he's really had an opportunity to now, having seen them in cabinet for the past 2 years, to align experience and expertise with the right portfolio for what the government needs to achieve moving forward.
But it would not be anything sinister by having a promotion, so to speak, and a demotion in perception.
I mean, that might be your perception or the perception of some. But I think you would have listened to the Prime Minister's address, and I think he was very clear on that. It's simply aligning experience and expertise with the right portfolios. And in terms of, questions of promotions, etc., the Prime Minister has always been clear that he wanted the right mix of wisdom and the right mix of usefulness in cabinet. So I think we would have seen that a few of the younger members who were perhaps state members would have been identified as great successes in their portfolios, and I think their portfolios were expanded to allow for a fresh perspective to be at the cabinet table in a stronger way. So the Prime Minister has been clear about that from the very beginning. So now we're seeing him stick to his word and saying that he's ready and willing to promote some, younger people in the fold.
Or even transfer experienced persons into another portfolio.
Correct. For example, look at Mr. Sayers. He would have had a lot of success at the Ministry of Works in terms of starting infrastructural upgrades and seeing a lot of projects begin. However, the priorities of the administration are shifting. NIB is going to become a central point for this administration, and immigration is a central point for this administration. So who better than a senior attorney with that kind of experience and expertise to lead NIB and to really sit there and do the technical work that needs to be able to shift NIB. The Prime Minister indicated that we're going to focus a lot on the law and policy drafting in terms of immigration procedures. And again, who better than Alfred Sayers, QC, to help lead that? And so again, the Prime Minister is aligning expertise and experience with the priorities of this new part of our term.
Ladies and gentlemen, I always say that these younger politicians have a way of words. You say you're a lawyer?
I am a lawyer, yes, sir.
That figures, yeah, in a good way.
No, man, but we just speaking truth here. I mean, it's politics, and so people will always have their spin. But as you said, I'm sitting at the table. I was in the meeting when the Prime Minister told us about his changes, and these are his priorities and how he wishes to align his cabinet. The Prime Minister, everyone in the cabinet serves at the pleasure of the Prime Minister, and so he has the right to assess where he thinks expertise lies and to put people where he thinks they will be best. And so that's essentially what he's done.
Any leader should do that.
Correct.
Any Prime Minister.
Correct.
Yeah, if it's worth a salt.
I mean, for example, a lot of people are talking about the move of Minister JoBeth Colby Davis. She is one who you can say has had tremendous success in housing. I think you cannot deny that. Whatever you want to say about her, the last administration didn't build a single house during its entire term. And so I tell people, if she built 2 houses, she was a better success than the last administration. But Bahamians, over 80 keys have been given to homes so far. She started the process here in Pinecrest, in Renaissance, in Nassau. Plans have been drawn up for Eleuthera, for Freeport, for Abaco. And so she's laid the groundwork and she's had great success. However, the Prime Minister, realizing her expertise in energy, she's represented companies in the energy field as an attorney. In fact, people would know that her master's dissertation was done on energy transformation of BPL. So this is what she studied in law school as a master's. And so the Prime Minister, realizing that expertise, realizing the need for perhaps fresh perspective in terms of not relying on the same old fossil fuels, oil, and perhaps someone who will put a little bit more focus on alternative energy, he decided that a priority shift was needed and that JoBeth Colby Davis was perhaps the best person to do that. And so, folks like me, even I had questions. She's doing so well there, why? But when you see that kind of explanation, you understand that it's a larger vision. It's a team. And so although you may like this portfolio and you're doing well, it's really what's best for the Bahamian people and what's best for Cabinet as a team.
Now, as a team, I know Mr. McCarthy is not, we didn't anticipate any sort of debate. We ain't going to go down that road today. We not care for that today, but at the appropriate time. But, Senator, tell us, the Honorable Clay Sweeten, when they say Minister of Works, that means Minister of Works for the entire country?
Correct.
Or only for Family Islands?
He's Minister of Works and Minister of Family Island Affairs. And so he's Minister of Works for the entire country, but he retains the portfolio of the Minister with responsibility for Family Island Affairs. And
local government.
And local government. And so you would know better than me, but I'm advised that that mix isn't the first time that has happened and that has been done in the past. And for me, I think it's a good mix. When you travel in Nassau, you see the infrastructural improvements that are needed here in Nassau. But when you travel to the Family Islands, you realize the infrastructural improvements that are needed for the Family Islands. So as a Bahamian who's concerned not just about New Providence or Nassau-centric, I like the fact that a Family Island MP is Minister of Works, because I think Family Islands will now get the attention that they need, that it needs. And I think that's also part of the Prime Minister's the Prime Minister's vision in choosing Clay Sweeting, who would have, again, been doing extremely well at the Ministry of Agriculture, but priorities have shifted. We need someone who is dead focused on the Family Islands as well as New Providence. And so I think that shift sends a message to people living in the Family Islands that this next phase, we're gonna not now is your time. The last Prime Minister used that phase, and so we're not saying we weren't focused before, but again, we were in such a state of distress. We were focused on saving the economy, and we know Clay Sweeting has experience in agriculture, so that may have been apt at that time. He got the Golden Yoke program started and other initiatives because of his experience, but now his priority and focus as a Family Island man is perhaps needed in the infrastructural sector. So again, priorities have shifted, and although you may have been doing well in your former portfolio, the Prime Minister has identified experience, expertise, vision, passion in another area that you may be needed now to take the baton across the finish line.
And ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to opine too much today, but we'll have the debate on that later on. But I do wish to compliment the Prime Minister. Nobody's lotion of the Prime Minister. Some people tell me I'm a psychopath of the Prime Minister. I am not, even though. But ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is that Mr. Jomo Campbell has been thrust into the substantive position as the Minister of Agriculture. I think that's a very, very good choice, if I may say so.
I think so as well, and Jomo would tell you...
He has extensive experience in agriculture through his family background.
Correct, and I gave him a big congratulations again. A younger person in the administration who has been working extremely hard. He's an attorney by profession. He went into the Attorney General's office, Ministry of Legal Affairs,
State, yeah.
And he helped to clear a lot of the backlog in the courts. He was a huge assistant to the Attorney General in the administration, in the office of the Attorney General. I think the Prime Minister saw the hard work, attention to detail that he would have put in that ministry, and would have identified him. Again, you may say the word promotion. I don't want to use that, but again, a realigning of priorities that Mr. Campbell is perhaps the man to take the baton from Clay and again bring it across the finish line.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I could say the senator have to be a little circumspect, because I imagine at some point he wants to get his promotion. But let me simply say that Jomo Campbell is one of those persons whom I've always supported. Yeah. Always. From the days of his grandfather, they lived on, what's that next corner? Montrose.
Montrose that way.
I could see Minister Campbell's grandfather every morning in the garden. They had an extensive garden in their backyard. Extensive. And because Jomo's father is my classmate from Government High, James or Jimmy Campbell, who was a former big-time manager at Twinco back in the day. We were classmates.
Okay.
So I am partial towards Minister Campbell. But tell me, insofar as talking about transferring, some people say it's a controversial topic, and you coming back here next week or so
to
give us more details. But there's a call on the line. It looks like, I can turn the screen a little bit more this way, man. Look like Freddie. Put the call on. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bodie. Good afternoon.
Yeah, producer, give me some volume there, please. Go ahead, talk to us. You're talking to the senator, and you have the former member of Parliament and all this good stuff. Good morning. Good afternoon.
I call because former Parliament is on the show. Mr. Bodie.
Can you all hear what he's saying? We are producer. We breaking up. They can't hear nothing. I could hear, but they can't hear nothing. Let's try it again. Go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, gentlemen. And good afternoon, Mr. Bodie.
I know we still can't quite hear. Producer, we better try again, because we can't. None of us can hear nothing what you're saying.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bodie, and good afternoon, gentlemen.
Is it better? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I called. I see my former member of Parliament for Bamboo Town in the studio.
Well, in a few minutes, but while the PLP senator's time is limited,
yes.
Would you want to ask him quickly?
Yes, I just want to say Mr. Griffin, he's privileged to be graced in the studio by an icon, one of the best, if not the best, Minister of Immigration. Not aside from Loftus Roca. And he only had 2 years. Judge, if he had a full term. Mr. McCartney.
Okay, Mr. McCartney, you want to say something quickly?
Well, thank you, sir.
Quickly, thank you.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
You said that you from Bamboo Town. It was my constituency that I represented for 5 years. And I must say, you spoke a bit about politics. That was one of the best parts of being in politics, representing the constituency of Bamboo Town, and meeting the persons there. That was a really, really good part of being in the political arena.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Senator, since your time is limited, any of the appointments, or I don't want to use the word reshufflement, but a lot of persons were surprised. I wasn't. I thought he should not have been replaced, but I'm not a prime minister yet. Not yet. Minister Bell was transferred into another area. Now, I do compliment the Prime Minister on this choice of Ms. Pia Glover role. Excellent choice, in my opinion. She has the expertise, she has the temperament, and she has the intellectual capacity. Not that Mrs. Bell didn't have it. But some persons, including your political detractors in the FNM, says that's a sign of cowardice, that the Prime Minister should have gotten rid of Mr. Bell outright. So Mr. Pentad says.
I mean, you know, as an opposition, I think many times you have to employ the tactic of death of a thousand cuts. You just throw whatever you can and you hope something sticks. And I think we've now realized that it hasn't sticked. People, I see people online talking about the fact that the FNM shuffled their cabinet. In fact, the leader Pentad was shuffled in that cabinet, and he was in newspaper saying,
he was shuffled.
Yeah, he was in newspaper saying that cabinet reshuffling is a desperate move, and so perhaps he thinks his reshuffling was a desperate move, but that's for him. But in terms of Minister Bell, Minister Pia Glover role, in fact, if we didn't bring up Minister role, I would have, because again, a great shining spot to see that again in realigning priorities. So let's just talk about the facts. We have 22 new industrial agreements signed in 23 months. That has to be unheard of, and that is strictly and only because of the leadership, the temperament of Minister Pia Glover role. And so when you have that kind of success in terms of seeing the first public service-wide promotions, you see increase in salaries, all driven by a youthful Minister of State, I think the Prime Minister would have seen that, and again, in reassessing and realigning our priorities, why not give her the role of Minister of Labour? With that kind of successful track record in that type of sector, I think it's only natural that the Prime Minister would consider that. And so again, in realigning priorities, and we also talked about already the priorities of immigration, and the great assistance having a senior attorney would be in that. And so in reassessing priorities, I think everyone would know that Minister Bell was a former police officer, and so having that experience, I think, aptly puts him in a great position to be in charge of urban renewal, which, when it started under the former Christie government, had a heavy police present in the schools, in the communities, with the marching bands. And so having that kind of experience would be extremely helpful. And so, again, reassessing and realigning expertise and experience. And I think Mr. Bell would be happy to be with the Minister of State, who is also a former police officer, Lisa Ramming. And so I think you can see the direction the Prime Minister is going with urban renewal and housing. And again, Mr. Bell was an attorney in the housing industry. So again, priorities, expertise, experience, realigning. And so I think that's what you should get from this administration. We've successfully completed what we would call a portion of our term. And so now it's time to build upon the success we've had. And again, some realigning would have had to go on.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to emphasize I'm partial towards persons like Mr. McCartney, even though he is whatever, FNM, DNA, independent. There's some people, I believe, who are sincere, like I believe you're sincere, Senator, and I see great things in store for you. I see you, we got to get beyond this thing, politics, PLP, FNM. Like Brother McCartney was saying, we need to have a national development plan.
I agree.
And I do believe that with the realignment of cabinet, the Prime Minister also sees that. What role would you like to play going forward, besides being the Vice President of the Senate? I know you don't want to big up yourself, but...
No. You caught me off guard with that question.
I know I did.
Yes. No, but I'm a team player, and I believe in the Prime Minister's vision of assessing priorities, skills, and experience with the larger goals of the team. I'm a lawyer, and as Mr. McCartney can tell you, as attorneys, we're trained to become experts on any matter that comes before us. And so anywhere that the Prime Minister sees fit, I would be willing to serve in with the view that it achieves the objectives in our blueprint for change.
Okay, blueprint for change. Now, any other ministry in particular that stands out? I'm happy that the Prime Minister decided to keep the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness. I think with something like health, we need continuity.
Correct.
But as Minister McCartney was alluding to before you came, not directly, but alluding to prescription drugs and some medication which is very, very necessary. If a person is not on the plan or didn't qualify, that's a great hardship. So I imagine you would advocate at the appropriate time and place. Maybe we should expand these things.
Expand the list of
prescription drugs. You know, there's now VAT applied to some medication, which perhaps didn't occur before. I know you don't speak specifically today for the Ministry of Health, but how are we gonna? When are we gonna get to a National Health Service, as far as you are aware?
So I think again that's something that's in our blueprint for change.
Yes, sir.
And so again, you stating the continuity at the ministry, I think that's going to be a focus and a priority for Minister Darville moving forward, as well as for example, the continued expansion of clinics across the archipelago, upgrading clinics. I was in Grand Bahama last week, and I saw that they're well underway in starting the building of the new hospital there and university campus along with the hospital. So I think Dr. Darville has a huge task on his head, on his shoulders, and to be honest, I wish him the greatest of success. And when we started, I said we're pretty much out of the pandemic. I know people like to think we're out, but we're not completely out, and so he still has to keep an eye on that. With hurricane season, you have the health concerns with hurricane season, so he has a heavy task, and I'm not jealous of that. So kudos to Dr. Darville.
Okay, another good thing, in my humble opinion, is not another good thing. A cause of concern is that some ministers of state have not been pushed up the rank.
Well, why is that a cause of concern?
Well, some of them, as you know, you an attorney, you know how lawyers operate, and a lot of them would be lawyers. We all, when I say we, I'm not at the bar, but I'm smarter than all y'all together. We look for promotion. We want to serve at the, not as Minister of State, as some people did, but substantive. They don't appear to use some people's talents.
I mean, but then if you promote everybody, then y'all can say we have a Gussie May cabinet. Everybody is a cabinet minister, 23 substantive ministers. But again, I think the Prime Minister, in certainly in speaking to the parliamentary caucus, we focus on the fact that it's a team. And sometimes on the team, you have to play a supporting role. And maybe you have an expertise to play in that supporting role. For example, Basil McIntosh has moved from Ministry of the Environment as Minister of State to now being in the Ministry of Tourism, Investments and Aviation. He has great experience as a structural engineer and would have worked on airport projects before. This government is hard at work at expanding the international airports in the country, upgrading a number of the airport facilities from Andros to Exuma, Grand Bahama, and so his expertise would be needed in particular in the Ministry of Aviation. And so while the Deputy Prime Minister would have certain priorities in terms of expanding airlift and things of that nature, as a Minister of State, he can lend support to the airport expansion projects. And so again, you may have particular experience, expertise that's needed in a supporting role in an existing ministry. So, and certainly I believe our entire team knows that we're not there for self-promotion and those sorts of things. We are a team here to hit the targets in our blueprint for change, which we were elected on. And so I think that's the ethos of this administration.
You know, you're a very good surrogate for the Prime Minister. You know, I'm surprised that you are not brought in to cabinet.
Again, team player, the larger vision of the team. Some of us are in supporting roles, and I'm happy to play a supporting role in this administration.
Listen, Prime Minister, I know you're listening. And if you're not listening, I know some stalwart councillors are listening. Whenever there's a by-election, I want to see somebody offer the nomination. I'm talking to you.
I appreciate your support, so I'll have you.
If it happens, it happens.
I'll have you to keep advocating for me.
Yes, sir. Now, we out of time. We got to let the senator run along. But, Senator, please, as soon as you are able
I'll be back.
Come back and give me a 2-hour show, please.
I will, and thank you so much for having me, Mr. McCartney. Thank you for allowing me to intrude on your time a little bit. But I think it's important for us to have these national discussions about what's going on and to hear it out of the horse's mouth, so to speak, so you're not just reliant on, the gossip on social media. So thank you for allowing me this platform.
Looking forward to you as early as next week or your schedule permits.
I'll be back. If Mr. Moss has me, I'll be back.
God bless you. Okay.